asking for the recordings of today, so please be mindful of that. And before we start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Lucas Simons. I'm from New Foresight Consultancy. Thank you very much. My name is Lucas Simons, New Foresight Consultancy, and we're facilitating this process. So, Vision 2020, you probably have heard about it. It's already going on for about 2 years, and only recently there was quite a milestone moment. Here you see on the screen a photograph taken in March where 3 executives of the 3 leading organizations, the MOU partners, have signed an MOU where they agree to work together under this umbrella, which is called Vision 2020. It's Ted van der Put, Program Director of IDH, Melanie Sulz, Executive Director of the 4C Association, and Roberia Silva, Executive Director of ICO. So this was the moment where the organization, the task force, felt ready to start organizing these webinars. To involve you all and to inform you on what's going on and what the ideas are. Again, with the intent to get your feedback and to get you involved. So, what is the purpose of this webinar? It's 4 purposes. One is to share information on the current status and the content of this Vision 2020, to clarify any of your questions. Again, please send them through the chat through Vision 2020. To gather your input and ideas. We will be asking for your ideas and feedback specifically on some of these issues, and to invite all of you to be involved in the next steps. So there are some very clear convening moments coming up later this year, and we want to make sure that you are informed about them and that you are invited. So without further ado, I would like to go a little bit. Oh, and this is still the agenda of this morning. My apologies. And so this is, now you can see what we have done this morning. It is for the next 40 minutes approximately. The 3 MOU partners, Mauricio from ICO, Annette from the 4C, and Jenny from IDH, will present to you the Vision 2020 aims and objectives, strategy and principles, the foreseen activities, and the different work streams that will be organized. Then for about half an hour, we will be taking your questions. Again, you can send them through the chat to us, and we will then directly address them. Then for about half an hour, we have some questions for you. So we would like to start an interactive discussion where we capture your collective thinking on some of these issues. And then finally, we'll try to be very clear on how we can participate and what are the next steps for this process. Here in this room, you can see them on the screen, are 2 MOU partners, and the third one is in his office in London, Mauricio, and each of them will now take a part of the presentation to discuss what is Vision to Vision, the why, the what, and the how, starting with Mauricio Galando, Head of Operations from ICO. Mauricio, are you there?
Yes, Lucas, good afternoon. How are you?
Very good, thank you, Mauricio. Can you please start with, you have been part of this task force since the very beginning. Here are the names of your other task force members. Could you please mention their names so they can get recognition for their work?
Absolutely. Welcome to everyone to this webinar. As you rightly said, the task force has been convening at regular intervals, and it has been instrumental in carrying forward the definition of this Vision 2020, and without its unfailing support and constant feedback, really, we wouldn't be here. So above all, of course, Francesco Tramontin, who has acted as the chair from on the list. Francesco has done a fantastic job, has done also a great amount of advocacy, has come here to the ICO to explain to members what is it that we want to achieve with Vision 2020. So really, I think he has to be mentioned above all as somebody who has led here. Adriana Mejia from the FNC, also very vocal. Annette, of course, that is part here of today's webinar. Cornel Kurt from Chivo, Jenny from Kawan from IDH, John Sluter from Cafe Africa, also very much involved. And I don't know if he's present right now, but I know we have his feedback constantly at every stage. Keith from PAN UK, Civil Society, Linda Butler from Nestle, also very much present at every stage. Marcel Clément from Brave Foster Alliance, bringing the voice of the sustainability standards. Myself from ICO, Melanie from the 4C as the director of the 4C, Rob Skidmore from ITC, Stephanie Miltenberg from DMB, also very, very important, has brought forward at every time industry's concerns and industry's voice. And finally, Ted from IDH, who also has accompanied the process throughout. So I guess moving on into the why, I think we all recognize that sustainability has gone through a transformation in years, and we all recognize that it has gone far beyond the standards, and we all understand that there has to be a systemic approach to really look into the sustainability of the coffee supply chain. And with that in mind, I guess the starting point of Vision 20 can be traced to a workshop organized by 4C in Hamburg in 2013. I had the privilege of being invited and participating at that workshop, and from there, I think the realization that many of us were thinking along the same lines, and that it made sense to gather people together to think about how could we align our agendas and how could we galvanize efforts so that instead of us working on our own little corner as individual organizations, we could put together our strengths, our skills, our expertise, and bring about proper systemic change. It is very difficult. It requires a lot of effort, coordination, and of course time. But the idea was definitely there, and since then we have begun to meet. So as it says, Vision 2020 is a public-private sector collaboration, and where we share a common vision and an agenda. And of course, later on, my colleagues will get into more detail as to what. I will just to tell you that the objective is that we coordinate our sustainability efforts so that we can avoid duplication. As you know, of course, we all sustainability is at the core of the ICO. It is enshrined in the International Coffee Agreement. And the same goes for 4C and IDH. So it is key that we do not do the same things, maybe from different angles, but certainly that we do not duplicate efforts. So we enable collaboration so that we can achieve greater results. This is all within the framework of collective impact. How together, by putting together our, sharing a common understanding of the topics and putting together our agendas, and not necessarily doing always the same thing, but making sure that we share the same goals, looking to the future, we can achieve greater impact, recognizing that no single entity can bring about the kind of change we need to bring to improve the sustainability of the coffee sector. And this, at the heart of it, is of course that it's a long-term farmer-centric approach in which at the very core is the standards of living and the improvement of conditions for coffee farmers. So this is really the key of it. It has a backbone structure where the three signatories of the MOU, ICO, IDH, and 4C, represent the backbone of the structure, but as the slide very well shows, it is an open-ended structure. We are definitely a very inclusive structure where the encouragement is for others to come, join, bring ideas, participate, and certainly be part of this great adventure that is just really taking shape right now.
Thank you so much, Mauricio. That was really great. So it's quite a unique process where currently three of these leading organizations are coming together, recognizing that the problems that the coffee sector is facing are too complex, too big for any entity to share, to solve alone. And so now these organizations coming together, forming a common vision, a common agenda, and actually create more long-term collective impact is really new. Thank you so much. Annette Pencil, Director of Sustainability of Innovations of the 4C Association. Could you tell us a little bit more about what are the aims that Vision 2020 tries to achieve?
My pleasure. Thank you, Lucas. What does Vision 2020 aim to achieve? So you have on your slides, now on slide 7, you see this little kind of house. This is the vision that has been agreed so far between the very different stakeholders who have been working now over almost 2 years on what is the vision of this initiative. So the idea is to build a common public and private, so where the governments, where the private sector, including the producer organizations and the civil society and donors, agree on this common public-private agenda in order to do what? As Mauricio said, we believe there is need and there is a great opportunity to build more collective impact. Meaning that, as Mauricio said, no one organization, no one government, no one country can achieve this alone to basically overcome what we call large-scale challenges that hamper currently the resilience and the attractiveness of coffee growing, coffee farming for so many thousands and millions of farmers out there. So the goal of this alliance is to come up with an agreed agenda to realize collective impact on large-scale challenges in order to foster the resilience and the livelihoods of coffee farming communities. That's the main focus. That's what we call farmer-centric. But at the end of the day, to be beneficial for the entire sector, for the entire industry. That's a very big and a very long-term vision. The task force has also agreed on 2 specific aims to be able to get to that vision. The first aim, as you see on the slide, on the leftish bucket, this is all focusing on benefits for the farmers in social terms, in environmental terms, but certainly also in economic terms. And the alliance wants to agree on collective farm level goals and to be able to also measure better over time the progress that can be made, building on the many existing initiatives and activities and investments out there. Talking about investments, it's also about aligning, but also increasing investment in sustainable coffee by coordinating funding. And this funding can come from the public side. It can also come from the private side. It can also come from investors. So the idea is, with this common agreed vision between public and private stakeholders in the coffee sector at a national level, at perhaps even a local level, but also at a global level, to be more focused, to set priorities with clear timelines, and then work on these priorities, facilitating as an alliance the collaboration and facilitating the measurement of progress over time. We are just still in the middle of building that, so it's very much a work in progress, and we're very happy that you are now joining us for this webinar. We are going to, after sharing some more information of where we stand, we are going to ask questions, because we can't do this all alone. But what we have been able to agree so far as guidance factors for the progress are a number of key principles, which I would like to summarize for you. What has been mentioned already is being farmer-centric, so putting the interests and the needs of the farmers, the coffee farmers and the coffee farming communities first in the way to set the agenda and to develop strategies and to implement strategies. Then there is the commitment to transformation as opposite to a rather short-term transactional approach to activities in the coffee sector. One of the other key principles is actually the agenda identification on systemic issues, so on the really complex, really difficult ones that we all have realized we can't really handle alone. We also would want to focus on a non-competitive or pre-competitive collaboration, as opposed to the very appreciated competition that we also need in the coffee industry to keep activities going and keep the business going. But this alliance focuses on the areas where non-competitive collaboration is possible. What is also deeply rooted so far in the development process of this campaign is the multi-stakeholder movement. You have seen, Mauricio shared with you some information of who is participating already in Vision 2020 at a task force level, and you have realized it's totally different organizations from the public side, from the private side, bigger companies, smaller companies, NGOs, producer representatives. And we want to broaden that. We need to broaden that to be able to work on that vision and eventually get closer to the fulfillment of this vision. And last but not least, one of the key principles is to base the activities and the strategies also on market needs.
Annette, thank you very much. That was very clear. So that begs, of course, the question, how will this work in practice? Jenny, Senior Program Manager Coffee from IDH, can you enlighten us on how this will work in practice?
Sure, and I want to emphasize what Lucas said at the beginning of this call, is that we've had a task force working for quite some time, but it only represents part of the coffee sector. And a large reason for having this webinar right now is to get your input. So these are the ideas of how we think it should work so far, but very open to your input about things that should change or better ideas on how to make things work. So as Mauricio explained in the beginning, we're centered around a common vision and agenda. We've got the 3 organizations that signed the MOU, committed to be the sort of backbone of this alliance, and that's ICO, the 4C Association, and IDH. ICO with their government members, 4CA with their multi-stakeholder platform, and IDH with our public-private partnership in the form of the Sustainable Coffee Program. We don't intend on creating a new organization or a new institution, a new legal entity, but really this should be a coming together of organizations that are working on sustainability, that are interested in the future of the coffee sector, and it will last as long as it's useful for the different participants, and it will work on the agenda items that are. The agenda items will be really driven by the different participants. And that is partly the 3 MOU organizations, but also yourselves in this webinar and others as well. So the activities that we see could possibly be happening under the Alliance is really coming together and defining the common agenda. So what are the issues in the coffee sector that require collective action right now? What is a different organizations trying to solve that they are finding are difficult to do alone or in a smaller group that would benefit from working together in a larger group? How can we coordinate our collective action to prevent duplication, prevent wasted resources and reinventing the wheel, to promote more coordination? You work in the north of this country, I work in the south. I'll create the materials and you roll them out. I did this in this country, how about we replicate it in that country? Governments learning from each other, private sector learning from each other, and civil society also playing a key expert role. Another activity that we could see happening under the Alliance is advocacy, to influence both the public and the private sector to move in a particular direction or to create policies to promote a particular behavior. A third one is reporting on progress of the framework. Once we have a common theory of change, once we have a common idea on what's important and how we achieve this, then we can start looking at common indicators and how can we compare different initiatives, compare different interventions, and therefore better learn from each other and also replicate action on the ground. Moving to the next slide that shows the concrete work streams. That's slide 8 in the original slide deck that we distributed with as pre-reading. We've identified some concrete work streams that are already running by the separate organizations. So we've identified 5 different work streams and have another 2 in the pipeline, where either the Sustainable Coffee Program or the 4C Association or ICO or together have been working on these different themes. And we believe that by working together on these themes, we can do it better and have more impact on the ground. The first of these is the National Sustainability Curriculum. It's being developed, supported by the Sustainable Coffee Program so far in Vietnam, Brazil, Uganda, Tanzania, and we're also kicking off the process in Indonesia and Colombia. And it's we hope that by working together with the ICO, we can embed it more strongly into the national government public extension services, and by working with the 4C Association, we can reach a broader range of public sector and private sector and civil society. The second work stream is engagement of local stakeholders. In that sense, IDH and the Sustainable Coffee Program and the 4C Association have been working together for several years now on sustainability fora. in different regions. So hosted several in Vietnam, and also next to the AFCA conference, the African Coffee Sustainability Forum. There's also the Sustainability Exchange Online, which has several different partners contributing to that, including ITC, PWAS, Boots, I think ICO was also involved in that. And for example, also the SCP has supported the carrying out of business case studies. Those were done by TechnoServe, and those are also available for public on our website. The third workstream is national platforms. So in many countries, these already exist, and in many countries, they also don't exist. But we believe that national platforms are an important place to drive sustainability in that country, in that sector. So it's a place where the public and private sector can really come together and form a joint national vision on, well, what does the coffee sector mean to us? What does sustainability mean for us? What are the issues that we're facing in order to be able to grow coffee profitably and safely and preserving natural resources into the future? There, the Sustainable Coffee Program has been supporting or strengthening the setup of platforms, but that's also being done by several other organizations around the world, and we believe that support from ICO and also the 4C Association will strengthen this work stream as well. Moving to the next slide, financial literacy and access to finance. This is something that's quite a hot topic by now. The ICO, as part of the ICO week, have had several consultative forums for finance already, and IDH and ICO and the 4C Association, as well as several other partners, hosted an access to finance workshop recently next to the AFCA conference in Nairobi. The fifth work stream is climate change, also a very hot topic this year, leading up to the UNFCCC conference. This is mainly focusing on adaptation to climate, and they're, for example, working together with Coffee and Climate with their toolbox of good practices, and working together with the governments to see, and research institutions to see how farmers can best adapt to changing climate. Other work streams that weren't somehow officially put on the agenda at the beginning, but in conversation we're realizing is important, and we're starting to work on to many different stakeholders where there's a lot of energy to work towards. One is gender and youth, so coffee farming as a family business, and the second one is collaboration between the different voluntary sustainability standards. So that's our sort of list so far of topics which we find exciting to work together on, where we believe that our different initiatives are strengthened by working together. But we're also looking at you participants in this webinar to say, well, what are your priorities? What do you want to be working on? Where do you want to be leading? Where do you want to be participating? Where do you feel you have something to contribute? And what would you really like to see happening this year, or next year, or the year after, to drive your work forward?
Jenny, thank you so much. Indeed, building on what she's saying, we again invite you to share your questions. I'm sure you have quite a few of them. Send them in through your chat function to Vision 2020 MOU partners, and we'll be now gathering these questions, and we will address them in about 5 to 8 minutes. So meanwhile, it's pretty clear that the governments of the coffee sector have already been organized in the ICO for quite a while. The 4C Association has been the platform for private industry and civil society to come together and address sustainability issues. But so far, the collaboration between the two have not been very, very fundamental. And so what is becoming clear is that Vision 2020 brings together these organizations, private industry, governments, local governments, civil society, and other stakeholders to identify, articulate some of these tougher, more complex sustainability issues, put them on the agenda, and work together in a collaborative way to try to solve them more structurally. So, Annette, we have now presented what Vision 2020 is all about, but could you please tell a little bit on how the process went so far? How did it start, and what did you do in the meantime?
Thank you, Lucas. Yeah, as Mauricio already said, initially, well, it was a workshop that was organized by the 4C Association to, together with the members and non-members, think collectively about what are the needs in the coffee sector beyond 2015, which we are at now. So that was 2 years ago. That was this famous Hamburg workshop, which created a lot of energy actually around, at that time, still on a very 4C focus, the need for a baseline standard or an entry-level standard to guide sustainable practices in the sector, but also the confirmed need to have such a convening space between public and private stakeholders to address, well, to agree on an agenda and then to address topics which are hampering the performance, also the business performance, not only of farmers, but also of other actors on the business side, but also from the perspective of government could be improved. Also from the donor side, there were very positive signals. So at that time, there was so much energy basically in the room for this kind of creative thinking of how could we overcome the fragmentation that still exists in the coffee sector and build basically on the great work that is also being done on different sides in different parts of the world by different actors. So how could we, basically the question was very big, like how do we bring all these ideas together and how do we get to something more meaningful and how do we improve the impact? So that was our starting point. Quite some time has happened. There was a lot of effort actually from all the participants in the task force and very much beyond as well. And as we said, and that is the reason why we are now sharing and inviting you to think with us along this process, there was a big milestone achieved, which was the MOU, which was recently signed in March by the ICO, the 4C Association, and the IDH. So now it's getting a bit more tangible. It's the biggest non-exclusive public-private alliance in the international coffee market to date. That was what we put in the press release, and that triggered a lot of questions. We received so many questions from so many sides, and everybody's keen on seeing, you know, like how is this potential being served? Is this just nice words? Is this just nice intention, or is there more behind that? We want to make more happening. And this is why we are now reaching out to you to share like what we could agree already about Vision 2020 campaign, to invite you to think along with us. And actually on the next slide, it's going to continue. They can't see this now?
Yes,
yeah, they can, sorry. So on the next slide, what happens after this webinar? In the morning, we had a webinar with close to 70 participants, and we had a very rich harvest of ideas, of questions, of proposals, of suggestions, and also of constructive criticism. So we want to reach out to you to see what do you think, what do you see this potential for better collaboration, and what needs to happen to use this potential and to transfer it into very concrete collective action that leads to collective impact. This is why we are here with you. There will be further engagement happening over the next couple of weeks and months. Just to name a few, I mean, this is an ongoing process and it's in development, as we said, but one milestone will be the feedback from the 4C Association members on the future role of the 4C Association as one of the MOU partners going forward. And we definitely wanted to also reach out to you and have more concrete thinking on more concrete in an in-person workshop sometimes further down the year, perhaps in the Q4. So we would want to understand from you if that was interesting for you, if you would come, if you would want to share, if you would want to contribute to Vision 2020 to make it happen. And one aspect which Mauricio will also explain in more detail is actually the launch of the Vision 2020 campaign in the context of the upcoming first ever International Coffee Day, which will be celebrated in the context of the Global Coffee Forum in Milano, in Italy, on the 1st October this year. So there will be another convening moment, and we want you to, of course, also participate and support actively.
Excellent, Annette. Thank you so much. So keep sending in your questions. We already received quite a number of them. Very interesting one. We will be addressing them after the next slide. So we have given you now a flavor of what Vision 2020 is all about and what the ideas are. So what are others saying about Vision 2020? I believe Rick Reinhardt, Executive Director of SCA, you are online, and you sent us prior to this webinar reference. We would like to unmute you and ask you, what do you think? What is your opinion about this whole Vision 2020 process? Why is this different, and why is this helpful according to you? Rick.
Thank you, Lucas. And good morning from the west coast of the United States.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As I noted in my missive to Annette, I presume everyone else on this call, am increasingly convinced that the problems that we face in coffee are really endemic problems to smallholder agriculture. And as such, they're not addressable by any given government or business entity or NGO. And ultimately, a collaboration of this nature is what we must construct in order to face down these endemic problems. And I'm interested in anybody who is willing to take the very challenging initial first steps to form this kind of collective impact organization. It's extraordinarily difficult to take the rather nebulous concepts and craft them into concrete action. And I'm sure the vast majority of the questions that have come from the group today are referential to that. How do you take this very good intent from the appropriate actors and construct activity where work streams and management and coordination and necessary funding can all come together in this pre-competitive space? I'm extraordinarily interested and engaged and have an abiding interest in trying to discover the answer to those questions and the others that will arise. And for that reason, I'm here and extraordinarily interested to hear the feedback and the questions and the other concerns that come from our participants. And thank you for inviting me. It's a tremendous pleasure to be here.
Lucas, I don't think we can hear you.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, classic mistake. I was on mute. Thank you so much for letting us know. Stephanie was present during the webinar this morning and gave a personal reference about this Vision 2020 process. Unfortunately, she could not be here for the second webinar. Her testimonial was we participate and invest in the IDH Sustainable Coffee Program and validate the efforts of the 4C Association. Vision 2020 builds on the work done by both initiatives and is the next step forward in building a healthy and thriving coffee sector. The partnership with ICO is crucial to encourage governments of coffee-producing countries to align with the objectives of the Vision 2020 campaign. And so that is a very encouraging statement of, well, soon to be a giant in the coffee industry. And we have another one, actually, John Sluter, CEO of Coffee Africa, who is here in the room. And we're gonna, if you don't mind, John, surprise you by pointing the camera at you. John, could you, in your own words, tell us, what, according to you, what is so special about Vision 2020?
Thank you, Lucas. We've been involved with Vision 2020 since the first meeting in Hamburg, and have long felt that there's tremendous potential in this vision. The world's coffee sector needs to work much more together and build relationships, we believe, if we're going to achieve the objectives that we have, which is a sustainable coffee sector and enough coffee in the next 10 to 20 years. And the challenge that we've seen working in a number of countries in Africa has been that it's very difficult to build public-private partnerships in reality. It rolls easily off the tongue to have a public-private partnership, but the reality is that neither side actually finds it easy to work with the other. And we believe that this Vision 2020 can provide a model and content to a lot of public-private partnership work in many producing countries, and even probably in the consuming world as well. But there's also the fact that even the private sector sometimes doesn't find it so easy to work together either, particularly in the pre-competitive arena. So we welcome the opportunity for this dialogue, this campaign, this opportunity to build relationships which are going to be the basis for going forward as a coffee industry. Thank you.
John, thank you so much. And clearly, I mean, you have a lot of experience in trying to set up these PPP structures locally, so you know what you're talking about. Thank you so much for your encouraging words. We've also received a statement from Mondelez, from Francesco, who is the chair of the Vision 2020 task force. And he said, Vision 2020 represents a unique opportunity to align interventions in coffee sustainability and build a truly shared agenda for the benefit of the farmers. What ICO, IDH, SCP, and 4C can achieve by working together is unlike anything else we have seen in the sustainability arena and beyond the usual platforms and round tables. That is how some of the key stakeholders are looking at this process, and that is that emphasizes and strengthens the idea that what we're doing here, what we're trying to set up, be it work in progress, is unique and is new and very necessary. And before we move on, I would just like to give you, as an audience, the opportunity to give your own statements, perhaps on your own opinion. Could also be critical. That is fine. That is part of the process. But what do you think is unique and new about the about Vision 2020 process? Please raise your hands if you want to say something. And if you go to participants, there you have the option to see the button raise hands. We will be able to see who does it and unmute you, because you're all muted at the moment for obvious reasons of background noise. Is there anybody else who would like to share its opinion about what you've heard so far? Don't worry, you will get other opportunities later. And we hope to really have a dialogue with you today, so please raise your hand.
So there's a manage participants either at the top of your bar if you're in the full screen mode, under the dots and more, there's manage participants, or at the bottom of the bar, and then if you open that you'll see who's participating, and in the top left you'll see a raise hand button.
I see here, very good. Joanna.
Joanne Sonnenschein from the Coalition for Coffee Communities in the US.
Please. We're unmuting you now. 1 second, please. How are we doing, Bart?
Can you speak, John?
Can't hear you.
We can't hear you now.
According to us, you are on mute, but we cannot hear you. Please write, otherwise, your remark through the chat.
There's a plus on the side.
Okay, sorry, Joanne, we cannot hear you, but we really would like to hear your input. Please send it to us through chat. Are there any others who would like to say something at this moment? Otherwise, you will get an opportunity later. All right, thank you. Then, now is the time to address your questions. I will now open the chat function, and we have received quite a number of questions. Earlier, we have asked you to also send your questions to us, and we actually, oh, I see here now, Joanne. You are speaking, but you cannot hear me. I simply want to share with the Coalition for Coffee Communities is trying to do. Sorry, you cannot hear me. No, we're sorry as well. If you
go to the bottom right of your screen, you can test your audio settings, and you can check that your microphone is working. And then when you do, maybe chat to us again when it's working, and then we'll put you back on.
Right on. Okay.
Technical help.
Very good. So we have a few questions from the audience, and we would like to select a few of them and then address them with the experts that are sitting here, the MOU partners. So we have one from Jan van Enden from HRNS, the Neumann Stiftung. And he's asking, what will be the institutional implications? Will there be a joint physical office, or will there be a backbone office, or a virtual only? That is a good question, one we have received before, also this morning. And Annette, you've already touched upon it earlier, but can you perhaps repeat?
Thank you for the question, Jan. That's indeed an interesting one. Yes, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm on air. Okay. So the MOU has just been signed, and the MOU partners have decided and offered to the rest of the task force and to you, basically, to fulfill the role of a backbone. So first of all, as we are early in this campaign, this will be done through dedicated FTE and basically a virtual office. As Mauricio and Jenny have been saying, and we've been working on this process already for some time. So there's quite a good relationship and quite a good understanding. So we, the three of us sitting here on behalf of our organizations and more support from our teams, will dedicate for the early days now a certain percentage of our time. If this is getting bigger and bigger, we have to see. So this is something still very much in development. This is what I can share so far, and we hope to be able to get to that level that even more capacities are needed. We will then, together with you, but also together with the governance of our membership organizations and joint programs, will aim to decide at what is then the best possible way to get this done in a rather lean and mean manner. We definitely do not want to build, fit for purpose. So we definitely do not want to build just another big organization. That's not the aim. It's a network alliance.
Very good. And normally, Jan, I would ask you, was that a good answer, and then give you an opportunity to perhaps respond. However, you sent us a second question. And so let me first address that one as well, and then give you the word, if you don't mind. So your second question, Jan, was, how do you decide on target countries and work streams? Is there a transparent process behind it? That's also a very good question. Jenny?
Sure. So I would say that the process is completely transparent, and it really depends on who's interested in doing what. So right now, as I presented before, when we were in discussions with the MOU partners late last year, we thought, we did a mapping of all the different efforts that each of our organizations were doing, and we came up with initially actually 3 work streams. So the national sustainability, curricula, climate, and access to finance is something that all of our organizations were working on. In the meantime, things like national platforms, engagement with local stakeholders, and also now in the last couple of months, gender and collaboration between the sustainability standards has gained a lot of energy. So in the sense of the Alliance won't actually be doing anything, the Alliance will be bringing people together, and those people, which we hope will include all of you on this webinar as well, will be working on the work stream. So say, for example, if we have a gender workshop in a couple of months, the participants there, if they want to work in Africa, they will work in Africa, and if they want to work in the Americas, I'll be working in the Americas, or in Asia, or in this country or that country, or we'll be working together on a global initiative. But it really depends on what do people want, where do they want to put their own resources, and in that sense, we'll be doing the same. So no top-down decision-making where the alliance says, we'll do this in this country and that in that country. It's very much a bottom-up. What do the investors in terms of money and time and people and resources, what do people want to achieve, and how can we do it better together?
So does it mean, Jenny, that the agenda that is being set is a global agenda, but how and where that it translates locally is also depending on where the energy is, where the initiative is? That is not something decided top down. It is very much coming out of the field, so to speak.
Yeah. So in an ideal situation, you'll have national platforms where the public and private sector in a particular country will have identified an issue, and they say internationally, we would like help in increasing our productivity. Who can help us?
Right.
And then different organizations from around the world, both public and private and donor, can come and say, we're also interested in, East Africa having more productivity. Let's all do it together. But it really should be a call from the bottom up.
Okay, Jan, we're going to unmute you to see if this was a good answer on both of your, I would say, very good questions. Bart, is he on mute?
Yes.
Jan, you're up.
Okay. No, thanks a lot for answering these questions. And I'm pretty happy with the answers. I think the whole idea of this coalition is great, and there's definitely a need to align things. And I think very much as Rick said, it will be very interesting to see how you operationalize all these different ideas and how this really will be put into action. So personally, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how that will work out.
Excellent, John. Thank you so much. Thank you also for your questions. Very good. We have another one who is slightly related to the topics that were just being discussed. It's coming from Rick from the SCAA. And his question is related to the question of Jan. Given the stated desire not to form another legal entity, how do you envision the coordinating and implementing functions necessary for effective work streams to be realized? Along the same lines, is there a provision for funding in support of the initiatives to enter into the system? I think that's particularly the question on funding will be on many people's minds. Mauricio, could you perhaps take on this question?
For the time being, definitely we have been devoting our own time. So if you like, the resources so far that have gone into the initiative have been mainly the time that each of us have spent into aligning agendas and making sure that we are able to convey also the same message. And with that, of course, that also we constantly talk to our own members and make sure that they are in agreement with every single step that we take. So that is so far. I mean, as was said by Annette, the beauty of this is that it by no means has the intention of creating a fourth organization or fourth entity based somewhere in the world where there will be a dedicated staff only for that. We want to make sure that everything that is done under this umbrella is done by us. So yes, we align agendas, but the ones that actually executed, the ones that actually where things are the actual organizations that are joining. Now, of course, this requires a lot of time for the coordination, and as such, there has been already a great degree of coordination done by especially by Annette. I would imagine in the future, when I hope this grows and we have more activities, more work streams being developed, it might be the case that we end up finding the need for somebody who is entirely devoted as project manager to run this, and that I suppose will come into the picture. But I think at this stage, where we are all happy and willing to give from our time for this and to share the burden and really the pleasure of moving it forward.
Thank you so much, Mauricio. We had Jenny. You want to actually contribute to this answer?
Yeah. So as I said before, we're all working on these different work streams in our own organizations, in our own initiatives, and this is really about bringing together the existing resources that we have for a greater impact and more efficient use of resources, greater learning between the partners, and also other participants. All
right, thank you. I have, where is it? I had another question here from André de Freitas from the Sun Network. If governments are covered in the ICO, private and civil society in the 4C, and the donor community by IDH, how are the other stakeholders mentioned? Who are the others, sorry, mentioned in the slides? Who would like to answer this one?
Yeah,
Annette, please.
Well, we share this question because we have probably a slightly also different overview on who else is there, and you can't see probably who else is already included in this webinar. So there are many more organizations out there, amongst them membership organizations or other initiatives that work with different partners. So as Jenny just said, and as Mauricio said, I mean, Vision 2020 is supposed to build, the idea of Vision 2020 is to build collective impact that would follow collective action. So whoever is out there actually in the coffee sector doing things is invited to be part. And that is many, many more initiatives, programs, organizations, membership organizations than currently represented by the three quite impressive alliance partners. So yeah, so it's basically also a question back to you. Who else do you think should definitely be part of these small circles around our common vision and common agenda? And who wants to participate? That's also the call here in our webinar. It won't be the only call. We're relatively early in the process and want to reach out to you at that point already.
And it's not that
Please.
And it's not that it's only the governments will be represented through ICO, and only the private sector and civil society through the 4C Association, and only public-private partnerships or the private sector and donors will be represented through IDH. Each of these, each of the MOU partners have different networks, and often they overlap, but they also reach different constituencies. So sometimes the link with some of the private sector is better through the 4C Association, or better through IDH, or even better through ICO. It's the same with the donor community. I think each of our three organizations have different links to within the donor communities, within the financial institutions, within civil society and private sector. So it really is who's interested in which topic and who do they feel best represented by. In the different work streams, it will also be, do different organizations want to play a leading role in it and participate as their own organization, or do they just want to participate in the fora or just read the report afterwards? And there they might feel better represented through one of the other organizations. But it really depends on what do people want and what do the different organizations want to get out of the alliance. Yeah, and what do you bring to the alliance?
Mm-hmm.
Andre, we would like to unmute you to see if this is a good answer for you. And I've seen if you already added some other questions in as well. Andre, what do you think?
Thank you, Lucas. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Well, the question is really how the functioning of the Vision 2020 will work. So let's say I'm a company, I'm not a member of 4C. How can I engage with Vision 2020? Or if I'm an NGO, let's say Greenpeace or something, I'm not a member of 4C, how can I engage with the initiative? I think it's a very interesting initiative. I was just trying to understand how others can join and participate.
Well, if my understanding is, and I'm also an outsider in that sense, is that there will be moments, there will be convening moments around different topics, and you already heard 4 or 5 of them, and there will be emerging ones. There are work streams, there are topics. And so you certainly can be invited if you're interested for these topics. So that is one way to be involved and to share your vision and your opinion. And then, of course, the idea is that this is not just a talking club, but there's action on the ground. And but then in a PPP way, because the idea is that we can only tackle these, let's say, more complex issues working together. And so, as we already said, wherever there is action, wherever there is structure, or there's energy to build a structure, and you feel that you have an interest or you have something to bring or something to add to that process, I think that's where you need to be. Does that answer? So first of all, do I understand it correctly? And is that?
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thank you so much. And Andre, is that a answer to your question?
It is. Thank you, Lucas.
Okay, thank you. Very good. We get quite some good questions. Let me see if I can get another one. Oh, this is a beautiful one. From Ian Luckmoon from DAG. Is there a plan to measure success in the different work streams? An idea on how to reconsider action undertaken? So how do we learn and how do we improve? Do you envision to engage with the stakeholders to discuss the focus of the collaboration and possible shifts? That is a very good question. Who could I? Annette.
Yeah.
And why is because I see a lot of resemblance with the other work that 4C is doing. So Annette, what do you think?
Well, that is the intention. We wouldn't, I'm not comfortable to say that there is a concrete plan out there yet. We are still in progress, but that has been discussed. So what the task force has been looking at after, agreeing on the common vision, which we would like to get feedback on by you, and after agreeing on the specific aims, we have started to trying to define outcomes at a global level and targets for each of these specific aims and outcomes at a global level. We realize how difficult that is. Yeah, to not fall into the trap of project thinking, to be very sincere here. But actually, yes, what we want to get to is to that kind of common progress measurement system. What we need to do for that is along the work streams, like thinking of a theory of change, perhaps for the overall, at a global level, for the overall agenda, thinking of a theory of change at a very high level. But exactly the same should actually, in an ideal world, happen at a national or even at a local level. So there we see that in some countries, through existing national platforms that, for instance, Jenny mentioned, this has been started to happen. And there is a form of progress measurement, and there is a form, in some cases more advanced, in some cases just starting, a feedback process, an analysis process as well on, okay, so this is what we had agreed. This is where we said we want to prioritize for this year or for the next 3 years. This is was our plan of who is doing what between the public and the private side. And then we measure this alongside the way, and we see actually some of these activities perhaps are not unfolding in the manner we wanted it. Or there is not this progress or this impact visible that we had hoped for. So that's actually the thinking, but we are not yet that advanced to call it a clear plan. And we would love to hear and to get active support and contribution from all the different organizations and individuals out there who are very experienced in doing that at a high level, at a system level. I hope, perhaps it's not a fully satisfying answer, but that's where we are in the process.
And so my understanding is, so if we would have a common framework to measure outcomes, perhaps even impact, who knows, on our collective actions, or that is already an innovation in itself, we will need to learn how that works. And so if I understand you correctly, Annette, is that by that we will be able to see around common topics, because we have identified that agenda, where people are more successful than perhaps others in addressing the issues, really come to outcomes, and then because we're measuring it, we can also start learning on a global level.
Exactly.
And that's the reason why I emphasize is because it goes back to a question on Andre from the Sun, who another question of him, a very relevant one, who says, foresee and ICO are associations and as such operate at a higher level, making them well positioned on areas like advocacy. But on the ground, work likely will be done by individual governments and companies, NGOs. How is the linking of these two levels being considered? So can you tell me a little bit on how that link is being done on work on the ground around certain topics and this high level Vision 2020 process and perhaps that framework in the middle?
Maybe
Mauricio, yes. Do you have any?
Yeah, a really good question, because I'm talking about the networks that each of us, the three partners, bring into the picture. The ICO, obviously, members of the ICO are governments, but the ICO also has something called the Private Sector Consultative Board. And at that board, what we have is national co-associations, in fact, not just in producing countries, but also in consuming countries, and they represent much more precisely the private sector's voice here from co-associations. Could be, it is mainly producers, but it could be exporters, it could be different types. So that already allows us to have a direct link to what is happening in the ground, the field in coffee producing countries. And I think part of what we have envisaged is to arrive at doing, for instance, workshops where the three partners can set up a workshop that would have different modules, say, for instance, access to finance, climate change, gender and youth, and the likes, and working in cooperation with with the National Association in a specific country, we can definitely develop the agenda. And of course, at the same time, the ICO would offer all the support and open the doors and make sure that there is constant communication with government in that specific country, which sometimes the government and the coffee association or the coffee associations are already very much linked, or in some cases can almost be the same, in others it's not so much the case. But in either way, we are certainly in the capacity to be able to bring, if you like, to connect to both levels.
Thank you so much. And perhaps good to emphasize again, this is work in progress and not a top-down process. It's the design is that it is inclusive. There's a lot of expertise out there and already on the webinar right now. And so trying to figure out on how this works, how that learning goes, how to build a good framework, how to learn from what works in one country to another, is where we also would like to involve you all, so that this is not a top-down process. We have a couple of more very interesting questions. I just want to mention them. Here you go. Let me see, from Lee. All right. Yes. All right. Here you go. Hello, Lee. Your question: how do we ensure national approaches are balanced, holistic, without some kind of definition of sustainable? We know that certain geographies are not sustainable, like deforestation or water management. So how do we limit excess? Cannot just be about productivity. Well, actually, I think I understand most of your question, but Lee, can we unmute Lee? Lee, can you elaborate a little bit on your question? What do you mean with limit excess?
At SC, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can, thanks.
Yeah, so at SCAA, there was a group met together to discuss the issue of water management, yeah, and coffee. So for sure, we can do water management projects in Colombia or wherever. But if you look at the topic of water management, there are probably some real big global issues in certain geographies. So if we want to fix global water management in coffee, would we be better limiting the excesses in certain places rather than, you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes, so you're saying, my understanding of what you're saying is that some topics, some issues are lend itself more for, let's say, global definition, global agenda, and then with local translation and implementation. Others are very regional focused or only relevant in certain areas. And so how do you deal with that on the Vision 2020? Is that correct?
Well, if we're talking about the sustainability of global coffee, yeah? Mm-hmm. You know, if coffee production is moving from some countries to other countries which are less sustainable, you with me?
Yeah, yes, we are. And the panel here is very anxious to comment on your question. Thank you. Jenny. Well, Jenny first, and then Annette, I believe.
I think, Lee, it all very much depends on who's your definition of we. Because in our view, we is everybody working in the coffee sector, which includes those in origin countries, including the producers and the governments there. And I think in answer to your question, this is where we see the role of the national platforms as being very important. So what does the sector within the country think about sustainability and water in this particular case? When they come together, the public sector and the private sector in a country, and hopefully there will also be representation from civil society, international civil society, and international private sector will also likely be represented in these national platforms. And together, they should come up with a definition of sustainability. And there, you know, and then it's in dialogue with this national platform and maybe other international organizations about, is this sustainable, and what does sustainable actually mean? What does it mean for the country? What does it mean for the different stakeholders buying coffee from that country? So I think it's very much a dialogue process and not a top-down definition that we want to be fostering within the coffee sector.
Annette?
Just to add on that, in order to avoid confusions, I'm just looking at the 4C membership, where the understanding of what is sustainable has been tried to be defined actually. So what we are saying here is not that we want to have a reinvention of the wheel of, you know, all the discussions that actually voluntary standards have been contributing to in a very valid manner. So if we say civil society to be part ideally at the national level in the discussion of what are sustainable practices that allow a thriving future of the coffee, of the coffee industry as a whole, of the coffee sector, then the perspective of sustainability standards needs to be in there. And our wish is, of course, that we wouldn't just, you know, to say it in very open words, we wouldn't just waste all the time that was spent by so many stakeholders to define what is considered by many to be the baseline of sustainable production in coffee, which is reflected in the 4C entry-level standard. So that all needs to be built on, and it's not about reinventing a new wheel, but it's actually also to what Andre said from Sun, it's kind of building on what is out there, validating the tools that are out there, but also seeing that we can't only address, like successfully the what we call the systemic challenges by using the standards, the voluntary standards as they look like now. We understand Vision 2020 as a bigger discussion to a forward-thinking understanding between, at a national level, the government, the private sector, the farmers themselves, to see, well, where do we want to be in 5 to 10 years? And how do we get there? And whose role is it then to do what? Where are the particular strengths? And can we perhaps use the resources which are scarce? Yeah, I mean, there are many resources out there, much is invested, but it's still scarce. I mean, we have not been able as a sustainability movement to reach out to the farmers who are most in need. So this is the discussion. And my plea is here to use as much as possible the established understanding of sustainability, but then localize it, yeah, or add, if water management is one of the priorities for particular producing countries. This is now happening. We have examples here where this is happening, and it is being embedded in the local understanding of the sustainable and thriving sector. So the plea is here to build on what is there, but to scale and to innovate as well, and to perhaps have different approaches with the farmer-centric understanding. And that's the very new piece here in Vision 2020.
So this is the question apparently begs for a very long answer. And so I would say Vision 2020 is not yet crystallized on this point. It's a work in progress. So my guess is that would be something that we need to figure out together, right? How do we deal with global issues or local issues with a common framework, national platforms who will have their own strategies versus alignment? I think it's the right question to ask, and perhaps it's not yet time to have answers. Now is the time to raise the question. So I think that's perhaps the best summary. There's another question at the moment which which needs answering as well, from Rebecca Ott from JM Smucker. How are producers being represented in the creation of the work streams and priorities, and perhaps even on Vision 2020? Marcelo. Mauricio, my apologies. Mauricio, can I ask you for feedback on this one? It's a very important question.
Yes, absolutely. Producers, of course, there is already a degree of involvement in the task force, as you saw. Yeah. But I think that is, in fact, one of the key areas where we need to increase participation, where we need to make sure that we reach out and much more, if you like, aggressively almost, where we really include the voice and the understanding of what do you think is really that is needed. Because it's not about us sitting down in our desks here and thinking what is really, rather having a conversation and being able to capture what is being really felt as the key issues guiding the needs for those farmers. As we said, the model is a farmer-centric approach. So in that sense, everything, the focus of everything that we do and we aim to achieve has to be for the well-being of the farmer. So getting that, of course, is a challenge. I think it's one of those challenges that will define the success or not of this initiative. I totally agree. It has been met so far only to some extent. Obviously, for instance, at the ICO, yes, we have producing countries, governments, as I said, national coffee associations that to some extent represent, but we all know that the vast majority of farmers are not organized, are not under any kind of collectivity that allows them to bring forward a voice. So it is also then, I think, to having those kind of events where we go to the producing country, where you can engage, as I said earlier, in, for instance, a workshop, a very inclusive workshop, and thus get that kind of feedback and that kind of ownership that can be the only way to make this meaningful to those that for whom this is being ultimately devised. But yes, it is, to me, is one of the key challenges that we have when going ahead.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not a new challenge. We have all been struggling for the last decades perhaps even, to do this, to organize this on a proper scale. So this is nothing new for Vision 2020 as well, but it is at least being recognized as one of the key things that we need solving. I would like to go to the last question, which is one we also heard this morning in slightly different. Oh, by the way, I wanted to give Rebecca the word, but apparently she doesn't have the functioning audio. But thank you very much for your question, Rebecca. One question that we also received this morning is this issue of competitive and non-competitive, if you will. And the question is being asked by Carl Servone from Technoserve, who says, over the past decade, industry has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on sustainability, mostly through competitive interventions like supply chain linked and certification. Perhaps that's my addition. Given that funding is not unlimited, what are the incentives for companies to invest more pre-competitively? How does this affect, if at all, their competitive supply chain linked commitment? And how do they decide on resource allocation? I want to ask this question to Jenny, because within the SCP, this is something that you have been struggling or dealing with, perhaps that's a better word, for the last couple of years. What have you learned, and what would be your recommendation here?
Yeah, and maybe while I'm speaking, if any of our private sector partners on the line would like to raise their hand to say something after me, then you'd be most welcome. So just a slight terminology thing, we're using non-competitive and pre-competitive sort of as interchangeably. So if we say one, then we can also mean the other. And by there we mean that initiatives or activities where a small number of parties will invest, but once it's published or once it's complete, then the broader sector will benefit. And from there, we could say publishing of a report, or, for example, setting up of a national platform. There, a small number will invest in making it happen, but that will benefit the coffee sector as a whole, either globally or nationally. So in the Sustainable Coffee Program, we've seen the origins of it in 2012 was the private sector making these massive investments and then realizing that alone, there are some things they couldn't do. So say, for example, or perhaps it was too risky to do alone. And there we really see things like government policy changes was a key thing, or this fostering this public-private dialogue. It's much more effective to do it as a group or to do it together and to have it benefit the whole sector than just invest and trying to have a bilateral dialogue. There your influence is increased, but also shared learning. So how can we learn off what other people have been doing in productivity increase, or in banned pesticides, or in, for example, in gender empowerment or youth inclusion? How can we learn and accelerate the competitive efforts in the sector through learning pre-competitively or acting pre-competitively? And there, I think it's up to each organization, and you can see things changing and some topics becoming more. Some topics people want to invest more in one year and less in another year, but there's always a certain critical mass around some of the topics that we've mentioned today that the private sector are interested in investing in it together. And also you see the same trends in civil society as well. There are some topics which have more attention one year or another, but in the end, when we're talking about resilience of the coffee sector and the sustainability of coffee growing in the future, we see that there are a number of themes that consistently come back to the table.
And so what is the secret to get industry to agree that they also should put money in the common pot, so to speak? Any experience there?
I think in the end, just like any business-driven initiative, the private sector wants to see results. So you make investments and you get results, and whether those results are just for my supply chain and just for the farmers that I want to work with, or whether you can see those results really benefiting your supply chain, and they also happen to benefit other supply chains as well. Yeah, in the end, we're able to measure and show the results of their investments.
Very good, very good. Thank you so much. Time is flying, and so we have a few more things to discuss with you. Very briefly, we asked you to send us your questions up front, and we received a number of them, and we were able to bucket them in these three things. we already addressed quite a lot of these issues, but one thing I just want to specifically pay attention to, and that is, what will success look like? If Vision 2020 is successful, what is different? How do we know? And what is unique about this process? So, Mauricio, could you help us understand what does success look like, as concrete as possible, perhaps?
Yes, certainly, Lucas. Well, I think that certainly for the time being, and we're working already on some work streams. So on the way in which we can see tangible results in the work streams will tell us already what kind of success we can see at least on the first or early stage. Say, for instance, access to finance. If we can see an increase in the level of in the amount of financing going to farmers, particularly small coffee farmers, if we see increased financial literacy that allows farmers to mitigate risk, that kind of would already give you an idea of, okay, we are succeeding, we are managing to get somewhere else with our concerted and aligned issues or agendas. That would be one. Another would be also increased allocation of resources to climate change adaptation, for instance. That is one, a very tangible one, where we are working all together and hoping to galvanize efforts to capture the very specific momentum which we're witnessing. I think long term we can be much, but if you want me to be at the very near future, these already are successes that we can look at and certainly aim to see concrete examples of results.
Thank you. Thank you. So, minding the time, then let's start the dialogue the other way around. We have some questions for you, and please be generous with your involvement, because we really need you. And my question is, please raise your hand if you want to say something. We have opened up the participants list, quite an impressive list. 47 participants still on the line after more than 1.5 hours. That is impressive. Thank you so much for that. We have a number of questions for you, which we are showing on the screen, and divided in 3 buckets. One is your general feedback. What do you think? What do you think success will look like for Vision 2020? And what are the most important elements that are new and unique to Vision 2020 for you and your work? And so that is one that we would like to get your feedback on. Another one is, we have identified 5 work streams, topics, and 2 emerging ones. But are these the ones that also resonate with you? We already had some discussion about what about more regional-oriented topics like water management. So are these the right work streams? And do you have perhaps suggestions for other ones? And then finally, and I want to leave this bit a little bit to the last, is that what about the name? Vision 2020, it sort of has a shelf life on it in the name. In 2020, it's supposed to be done. And well, at the same time, we are acknowledging that the issues that we were trying to solve are very complex and therefore will also probably take a long time. And so is Vision 2020 the right name, or should we perhaps give it another label? And one of the suggestions were that we can mention, call ourselves the Global Coffee Alliance. However, that name was already quite slashed this morning, so feel free to add your 2 cents in this discussion as well. And we really would like to hear from you what it is that you think is the appropriate name of the intent of what we're trying to do. So I'm going to open the participants window. Please raise your hand and if you want to react on some of these questions. Who can I give the word?
If you want to raise your hand, go to participants. Open it up, and then in the top left, you'll see a button saying raise hand.
Who dares?
Here we go.
Here we go. Mike Wheeler. You're unmuted. Mike.
Hi. Yeah, good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. No, basically, I'm looking at the list of various sort of farmer-centric models and what way you want to move forward. But what I don't see there is this emphasis on getting farmers to see their coffee enterprise as a business. I see financial literacy, I see access to credit, but what I don't see is any access to sort of farmer training on business skills, on basic business skills. I think one of the problems the coffee community faces at the moment is we concentrate on smallholders and see that as a sort of a way of life rather than a way of moving them from a sort of subsistence model into a business model. And I think for me, I would like to see some emphasis on that.
Spot on. Thank you so much, Mick. This morning we were receiving feedback that productivity should be much more at the center of some of these work streams, and our response, of course, was, well, that's part of the sustainability curricula, but perhaps it should be more centered. And to your point, Mick, productivity is one part of having a good business. It's also entrepreneurship. It's also management skills. It's farming as a business. And so personally, I'm very that what you're saying resonates very well with me. But I want to hear from Annette. What do you think?
Agree.
Agree.
Thanks, Mick.
Very good.
Yes.
Jenny, what do you think?
Also agreed.
All right, then let's go 3 out of 3. Mauricio.
I think that that is somehow, or was implied, but I think it's important to make it explicit so that we make sure that it's certainly at the very core of how we see, because in a way, for me, financial literacy already somehow touches upon, but it doesn't, I agree, it doesn't make it fully obvious to everyone. But so, of course, yes, we will then make it a lot more there.
Yeah, perhaps what the feedback is that I think we have covered it, or we think we have covered it, but we have taken the tools as a theme rather than what we're trying to achieve, right? Mm-hmm. It's farming as a business, which includes the farmer literacy and not the other way around. And so that is something we need to think about. Thank you so much. That was a really good feedback. Can I give the word to somebody else? Please raise your hands. We really want your feedback. That is much appreciated. Anybody else? Then while we wait, what do you think of the name Vision 2020? Is that the right name for what we're trying to do? Or the Global Coffee Alliance, perhaps? Or any other suggestions? What do you think? We have a hand, 1 second. I don't see it.
It's Eduardo Heron from Secafe.
It's not on my list, but please unmute.
Yes.
Eduardo. Eduardo Heron, did you please? We cannot hear you speak. We hear some background noise, but no voice. Please raise your hand again if you want to say something. Otherwise, we will mute you. All right. Thank you. About the name, what do you think? Vision 2020, does that cover what we're trying to do? Does that give enough feeling of urgency on the topics we're trying to address? Does that give enough feeling of that we need to do it together? Is it inclusive enough? Is it rallying enough? Or would you like to see a different name that gives more justice to what we're trying to do? Please give us your feedback. Or are we all doing emails? Please raise your hands. The feedback we got this morning on the name was that Vision 2020, what people liked about it is that it did give a feeling of urgency. It gave a feeling of we need to achieve something within a certain date. Of course, there's a flip side of that, is that after 2020 you have to change the name because it's sort of self-terminating, but the feeling of urgency is important. And the feeling as well of the name Global Coffee Alliance, or the feedback was that there are many alliances out there and it doesn't rally, it doesn't spark action. There are already too many talking clubs, so to speak, with all the respect, that are calling themselves alliance. So actually we got quite some pushback on the name Global Coffee Alliance, which we need to take into consideration. And so already some new names. Please help me out. What was suggested this morning?
The Global Development Alliance, the Coffee Vision Alliance.
Coffee Vision Alliance.
Or the Global Coffee Vision Alliance.
So some creative energy there to try to mix the two. But please give us your feedback. You can also share your feedback. We will share with you the personal email addresses of the MOU partners. So you will have direct contact with them. And if you don't feel like it now, or you have to digest the dense information that we gave to you, which I can imagine, then please give us your feedback later on. We will send you a report of both webinars pretty soon, so you will have something to look at and to discuss internally within your organization or share with other organizations that you feel should be included. We have actually, John, you wanted to say something?
One name which has been discussed and which was brought up was the possibility of using the name campaign, because campaign speaks of movement, it doesn't speak of institutionalization, it speaks of something which has a dynamic. So
Yep.
a Vision 2020 coffee campaign would speak of a lot of movement in a shared direction, and hopefully, well, it might be interesting to know what people thought.
Excellent. The word campaign indeed is more, wait a minute, I see now that people didn't raise their hand. People have been sharing a lot of chats. So, and Eduardo, you don't have any sound, I see now, and you send us a whole story. 1 second, let me quickly browse through what we have received.
Maybe
here
I
you go.
can say something now.
Yeah, please.
So while Lucas is doing that, one of the test cases which someone came up with this morning was when they mentioned Vision 2020, everyone was like, "Ooh, tell me more." Whereas when someone mentioned Global Coffee Alliance, I was like, "Oh, another talk shop." So it's a test for try out new names. Which one really generates appeal and excitement, and which one less?
Okay, so we have here from Lee, Vision 2020 Global Coffee Alliance. So that is another mix of the two ones. Thank you very much, noted. Another one from Andre. From a branding point of view, Vision 2020 does not say anything about coffee. Interesting, it's true. And interesting also because this morning the same argument was used from a marketing point of view, Vision 2020 rallied action. But I would like to also ask you for feedback on the word campaign. Very good question, Eduardo. That is more of a technical question. I would be happy to respond. Yes, Eduardo, you have sent us quite a long story, which is a bit too long now to read out, and it is indeed a more technical question. So what I will do is to save this question, forward it to the MOU partners, and so later on, perhaps even as part of the report out, we are able to answer your question. So it's not to ignore it, but in the interest of time, I will forward this question offline. The question campaign, there's a hand raised by Lee. I'm going to there now. And yes, Lee, you have a question. You're unmuted now, Lee.
Yeah, so my question doesn't relate to the name.
Okay.
I don't know where we're going to fix it this minute. So just an observation, and one of the challenges we as Fair Trade are perhaps a little nervous about is that how do we ensure that what goes on in the country is balanced, in that obviously we tend to work with the small farmers who are perhaps organised through co-ops, and we also have traders who are very often working with unorganised farmers, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a hesitation, if we find that resources, how do we ensure that resources are, as it were, fairly distributed in country? Because historically, farmer organisations are obviously stronger than individual farmers, but farmer organisations are not as influential perhaps as traders or some of the large roasters, yeah?
So I think in the same line as Jan's question earlier about will there be a transparent process about which countries will, or which work streams will be worked on and who decides what. In the same sense, the way that resources will be distributed will also be a bottom-up process more than a top-down process. So right now there are a number of investors in the coffee sector. It's civil society, it's donor organizations, it's also the private sector, and it's also governments. And what we hope through the Alliance is that we'll paint a picture, like in an ideal situation, we'll have a common theory of change. We'll paint the picture of what needs to be done. We'll map the initiatives going on. And there, hopefully, people will see, there's a gap here. Let me work on this. Or, let me learn off what's going on in this. Or, I wanted to work in the north of the country, but there's already 10 initiatives working in the north, and there's no one working in the south. I'll go to the south. So it's not that the Alliance will decide on how resources are distributed, but we hope to make the entire sector and the investments in sustainability more transparent, so that each investor can make their own decision about where to direct their efforts.
Is that a good answer for you, Lee?
Yeah, but the challenge is that obviously the coffee sector is not just those big five, big six,
No, absolutely not.
So when you come to a country level, it might actually serve everybody's interest to say, okay, in this particular region, there's a real problem with coffee rust or whatever it is. And therefore, we're going to challenge that at a community and regional level. And it affects all farmers, whether they're organized or unorganized, whether it's a trader or whether it's a co-op. You with me?
Yeah. And there we really see the role of the national platforms in directing the resources, but then also in the coffee sector, I think there are some organizations that are more focused on development and others more focused on the commercial aspects of coffee and everything in between. And I think in every country that's the same, and perhaps in painting the picture of where there's more resources going and less resources going, that these resources will be redirected to where they need to be. So in that sense, when Annette showed you the picture of the house, and one of it is market needs based. So we're not just talking about the commercial markets needs based, but also the development needs market based.
Okay, so we don't have to answer it now, but anyway, I'm pleased that you do see it that way.
So this whole discussion is showing that the need to address these more complex issues, we don't have the answers, but it's about organizing the process in such a way that we can at least start asking different questions. And that's already happening. So thank you so much. Two more things, and then I would like to go to the final part of this presentation. From Noemi, thank you so much. You actually have been Googling Vision 2020 and coming up with suggestions on how we might come up with good combinations. That is very much appreciated. This is noted. Thank you. And from Rebecca Ott, I just want to mention this. As general feedback, I'm very encouraged by the aims and collective impact model given the big and complex challenges in the coffee value chain. I think success will look at how to structure the learning agenda so that the link between high level and ground level results in systemic change. Now that is perhaps something we just want to give it a few more minutes. How are we going to organize learning and innovation? Because clearly trying to solve these challenges with yesterday's answers is not the issue. So how are we going to deal with that? Any ideas? Jenny?
Me? I feel like I've been talking a lot of it.
But very quickly, because this is an important point. Perhaps we can
do the round.
Yeah, exactly. We'll do the round.
Yeah.
How we constructed the learning agenda. I think, in each of our organizations, we've, I think, not just the MOU partners, but in many, there have been a lot of learnings over the last years, and how can we really show the benefit of doing that together. So I think that learning will likely be organized on an organizational level, also on a country level, also on a global level, also on a
topic level,
of course, and that will also depend on the needs. So where has sufficient learning been generated? Where is there data available to be done on it? And from the ideation perspective, we see a lot of learnings between the different commodities that we work in, and also in coffee. We're also now that we've had projects running for several years now, and actually from Vietnam, we're having our first cross implementing partner workshop for our field level projects. So something that I think all of the MOU partners see is very important. How exactly we're going to structure it is still a question that's open. So any concrete ideas on that would be welcome.
But it would be actually, and we will come to the next slide. There are a couple of moments being organized now this year. for whatever topic that is being identified as something that is Vision 2020 or whatever will be the name is going to be on the agenda, that immediately the question one is how do we organize ourselves, how do we implement, but also how do we learn and improve. So it could be a sort of
right from the start,
yeah, exactly.
back,
yeah.
Looking into the future.
Yeah, yeah. Annette.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to not really add so much different from what Jenny said, like what I wanted to mention is exactly what you now triggered, is like, okay, so there, what I've been saying like several times during this discussion, I mean, there is a lot of work being done, and we shouldn't neglect that. There is fragmentation, and there is lack of oversight. There is lack of structured learning, let's say, in the sector. So perhaps we shouldn't start like with a very big aim, but start small and start where the energy is, as Jenny said also and Mauricio said several times. So start at a country level where there are already so many partners, and the government and the private sector and the farmers anyway already in a kind of a partnership. Yeah, where this is then easier to get done, and get it done and then share it and inspire others to also try it out. Yeah, or at a global level along certain topics. I mean, Lee, you, for instance, you mentioned coffee leaf-rust. I mean, where there is a crisis, where we can't manage, there is an immediate need and urgency to get to more action. So if we could do that in a bit of a more, let's say, preventive manner, that would be great. Of course, we need to see where the energy is. Same goes for climate change, which is kind of a very high level, desired positive state if farmers are able to then manage better climate change. But who knows so much about it? There are so many initiatives out there, but there are so many open questions as well. So perhaps we need to identify where the ability is there and the willingness to share, because there is a competitive world out there as well. We have to just accept that. And then go with the energy, and have a discussion on where the priorities in these learning fields are.
Great.
And just get it done, basically.
Get it done. Mauricio, can you please elaborate how do we learn, and perhaps particularly with governments involved? And it was already mentioned that framework is, of course, a very important part in the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, and you cannot learn and improve without this kind of, let's say, aligned framework. What are your thoughts on how to learn and improve and having a framework from an ICO point of view?
Thank you, Lucas. I think this is a truly fascinating process, because I see different layers of learning happening here. So on the one hand, you have the backbone organizations, and you could include, of course, as well, the all task force members, learning from each other, which already in itself actually is quite a thing. You have the ICO has been around for more than 50 years. Of course, we are by far the ones that have been here the longest, but all the other two are very well established institutions, and yet we are in a fascinating moment of learning from each other, or learning to see the same topic from a different angle, of learning how to connect and how to do things in a different way, and perhaps realize that, oh, I didn't consider that part of the equation, or maybe we can. So it's not just that there is a certain complementarity between institutions, but actually we are learning to be better, to be more perhaps critical, more to have better perspective. So that is one instance of learning. But at the ICO, for instance, we obviously talk to governments, and we offer twice a year here during the council sessions, but also at our seminars and other events, the possibility to members to connect with the World Coffee community, to each other and to others. So in as much as that process also is happening, this process is happening, we are also allowing our members to benefit from this increased and new learning that is taking place. So there is there once again another layer where through the ICO, for instance, our own membership is benefiting from this gained experience. And then is the kind of knowledge we can bring, and the learning process that we do when we go out there to the field, if you like, to the coffee producing countries, and we discuss with them in a way like we did, for instance, now in Nairobi, as was already mentioned, and all learn from the experience. We bring something that was produced perhaps in our headquarters, or it originated, but then takes a life on its own once it's put out there and is practically used and transformed by our end users. So it's a fantastic circle, if you like, or cycle rather, learning from all sides, where we increasingly become more sophisticated and at the same time perhaps more humble in realizing how big the challenge is and how we all need each other to be able to achieve certain basic aims.
Thank you, Mauricio. I will give you the word in a couple of minutes for the last slide, the roadmap forward. But Rick, you had your hand up for quite a while. Thank you for your patience. I want to actually give you, for now at least, the opportunity to, as last speaker, to ask a question or make a statement. Rick.
Thank you for letting me have the floor. The overarching impression I have is that what we're really talking about is making a significant shift from approaching the issues that we are confronted in coffee on a activity basis or on a project basis and into this approach towards systemic change. And inherent in that, I think, are two key pieces, and I guess I'm reflecting some of what Rebecca Ott has already framed fairly well, which is there seem to be two critical pieces to this. One is less easy to talk about, which is eliminating redundancies and thus becoming more efficient in the disposition of resources. There are literally hundreds of projects ongoing as we speak where there are tremendous redundancies that might be eliminated and dramatically increase efficiency. And it's a topic that's sometimes challenging to consider, but one that I think it's incumbent on this group or any collective impact group to consider. And then the other is the willingness to be fully transparent in the assessment phase of whatever work does take place, so that we don't continue to struggle in the same fashion with the same miserable results. And to that end, I'm both encouraged and concerned about the activities of Vision 2020, which is how do we effectively make that shift into a systemic approach, and how do we effectively create sufficient transparency that not only are the learnings there to be gleaned, but that they're actively shared, actively pursued, and actively assessed to affect change in the models we apply towards development. And I'm incredibly optimistic about the possibilities for a collective impact model. I'm either tremendously dense or just unable to quite grasp the next step from intent to activity, particularly given the increasing desire not to have a thing, not to create another entity, which I share, but I continue to be somewhat mystified by the space that lies between our intent and the desired outcome.
Rick, this was excellent, both a fantastic summary of the daunting task and challenges of what Vision 2020 is about or trying to do, the optimism, the concerns, the questions, and also how do we bring it forward and try to make it concrete and actionable. Minding the time, I think I would like to leave it with that. It's recorded and I cannot improve on your summary, but in order to how to bring it forward and make it concrete, Mauricio, could you walk us through this slide that is on the screen now with some very concrete convening models this year?
Certainly, Lucas. So as the upcoming events, well, first of all, and as you see on the top of the slide, anyone interested in knowing more, participating, sharing ideas, suggestions, please feel free to contact any of us three. It doesn't have to be the case that because you are from a government organization or entity or ministry, you need to contact me, or of course, I think all three of us will happily take any input from anyone who wants to join in. So, but you have our emails there. So that is the first thing. Now, in terms of what's next steps, as I said, I think we have two layers here. We have the long-term view and how we hope to achieve this systemic change that, as I agree with Rick, is a daunting task, and I think somehow nebulous to pinpoint, but there are already concrete work streams, and we identified some already, and they have been, I think, explained by my partners here. I would like to now highlight two that we are looking more as future work streams. One is sustainable farming as a family business, and that is gender and youth. I think all three organizations have at the core the importance of gender and youth. We know obviously the kind of huge benefits we can gain, how important it is to give it more attention. We have begun at the ICO, for instance, to include it in our project assessment. I personally participated in a seminar last year on women and coffee, and we're thinking of doing an event along these lines altogether. And then, of course, there is the work on climate change, where also all of us already began. The ICO is in the process of finalizing the position paper on climate change and coffee that should be ready this September to be presented to the UNFCCC meeting in Paris in December. So those are two very concrete work streams that are, I think, very topical, and where we can, I think, bring about a good convergence of ideas and hopefully resources. Now, in terms of what's coming up as well, we think it's important that we have a workshop where we all get together under the same roof, not just virtually now, but really to be there and have the chance to confront, discuss ideas, and get to know each other even better. And that we don't have a date for that workshop yet, but we think ideally it should be during the last quarter of this year. Of course, once we have a clear idea, and depending on the feedback we receive from these two webinars, we will be able to give you more precise dates for this, or a precise date. But for now, I think it will definitely be the last quarter of the year. And finally, as it says very well there, in September, October, the ICO will have its International Coffee Council, but also it will be the first Global Coffee Forum. And this Global Coffee Forum will take place in Milan, within the framework of the Expo Milan. And the topic of the Expo is Feeding the Planet Energy for Life. And the Global Coffee Forum has been divided into three main sections, if you like: coffee and pleasure, coffee and health, and coffee sustainability. And in the coffee sustainability, we have already earmarked a slot for Vision 2020, because I think it would be a great platform to disseminate information on the initiative, to obviously invite even more people to join, to be involved, and hopefully to get a lot more attention from everyone else. So I think we have quite a packed year ahead. We have definitely a lot to do, and in a sense, this is what is going to be shaped, of course, by the kind of feedback, and both from our own members, but also from the large audience that wants to get involved.
Thank you. So it's pretty clear that this is going to be become more concrete already this year. Already several meetings will be and report outs will be organized. Your feedback is very much appreciated. You'll be invited for those. And so again, this is work in progress. It is not a top-down initiative. It does not pretend it has all the answers. It pretends it's going to ask new questions, and it's going to organize your involvement and your feedback for these questions. Let me see. We are almost at the end of this session. I just want to ask the MOU partners to say in one sentence. So, what do you hope? What is your hope for the Vision 2020 process moving forward? Can you articulate that, Jenny?
Sure. So thank you everybody for your participation in the webinar. It's quite an extensive process given the demands on everybody's time these days. I hope that for the process going forward, that you will all participate, and that we'll get your input on what you find important, what you want to work on, where you want to put in your resources and time and energy, and together we can do more for a thriving coffee sector.
Excellent. Annette.
Well, thank you, first of all. I think that was really encouraging and inspiring, and also food for thought for all of us and for the task force members as well. So please do stay in touch, do share more. And yeah, what my hope is that there is enough leadership and enough sense of urgency in this coffee sector at this moment to grasp this unprecedented opportunity that is out there. I'm very much in line with Rick. I mean, the task is huge and there's so many unanswered questions. But at the end of the day, it's a leadership question, I believe. So let's get this done together.
Well said, Annette. Thank you. Mauricio, any?
Thank you. Yes, I would like, to thank everyone for having participated in the webinar. And I think that we have to seize the opportunity that is given to us by this favorite climate, if you like, in this collaboration between public and private sector. As I already mentioned in the morning, this is something that would have not been possible just 10 years ago. It is possible now. We are doing it. It's not clear sometimes exactly the steps, but I think even if we do small steps at the beginning, it really looks as if we're not changing the world. And of course, we have a huge task ahead. But I think just the fact that we are in the process of, and that we are being able to channel this energy is already going to hopefully impact positively our sector, which is what we all want, a thriving and prosperous coffee industry for all. Thank you.
Mauricio, thank you very much. Last, certainly not least, John, your final words of wisdom and inspiration.
I believe that clarity will come from actually implementation. Our experience in running platforms in different countries in Africa has been that clarity comes as we go on the journey. And we are finding that it is not just a learning process, but it is a listening process. Because we've got to be listening much more, all the way up and down, not only to each other, but also to the farmers in particular. So I hope it will be a listening process and a learning process, and that it will make a real impact on the sector.
Fantastic, John. That was really, really great. I want to thank everybody who is still online after almost 2 hours. That is, I know how busy you are. I know emails are flying in as we speak. Thank you so much for your attention, for your participation, for your feedback, for critical questions. Like Annette said, this is food for thought, food for thought on the topics, on the name, on how do we organize ourselves, how do we learn, how do we do it locally. These are exactly the right questions, so we're very happy with that. We will send you a report out of both webinars soon, and that includes a link to the recording of the webinar, so you can feel free to forward this. Saying yes, thank you.
Listen as many times as you like.
Yeah, exactly.
And get back to us on that.
Thank you so much. And please, you have the email addresses of the MOU partners. They are, you can email them directly for any of your comments. And if we have not been able to address your questions, which you have chatted to us, we will try to address them in a report out, or feel free to send them again to the MOU partners. Thank you so much for your participation. Have a good day, and we will now be closing the call.
Thanks.
Thank you.